Welcome to another video. In today's video, I will tell you how you can make your FlutterFlow application secure. So when you're using FlutterFlow for building your mobile application, you have different options to utilize as a database with your FlutterFlow platform. So you can either use Firebase or you can use Supabase. And there are other database technologies too available to which you can utilize with FlutterFlow. So in this video, I will assume that the database that you are using is Firebase. And if you will follow this checklist, I believe that 95% of your application will be secure. Your FlutterFlow application will be secure. So the first thing which comes into my mind for the security of your app is that if you are using FlutterFlow on front end, Firebase on back end, in Firebase, there are multiple collections. Like if you have a database, it can have multiple tables or collections into this. Like for storing the users data, there can be a users table. If you are creating a social media application for storing the post, there can be a separate collection. Similarly, the comments that people make on those posts, there will be a separate collection for that. So the first thing that you can do for security of your FlutterFlow application is that you never store username, password into any collection into your FlutterFlow database. Reason is that FlutterFlow provides an authentication method, a way that you can utilize to store that information. So you should only rely on that. Passwords should be encrypted and password can be encrypted into this properly and they will be secure. If we will store it into the collections, then there is a probability that this data, this password can be exposed to other users in the platform. So for the security, the number one thing to do is that always store email and password into FlutterFlow Firebase auth provider. Okay. The second thing is the payment security. If you are creating a FlutterFlow application, there are 90% chances that you will need to integrate any payment channel into your FlutterFlow app. Basically, all the application, if there are paid plans into them, there are packages available that you can that you have to pay to access the application. So most of the times you have to collect information like card information, CVV, to perform that transaction. The recommended thing is that you cannot store that information into Firebase database because that is insecure. If you want to store card number, CVV, expiry date, it's important that platform should be PCI compliant. And your platform, the application probably that you are going to build, it's not going to be PCI compliant. So the better approach is that you integrate a payment gateway with your application. That payment gateway can be Stripe, that can be Paystack, PayPal, Payfast, any platform that you want to connect with your FlutterFlow application. If you integrate them with your app, what's going to happen is that when anyone tries to purchase a package on your application, they will be redirected to the FlutterFlow to Paystack or Stripe. They will make payment there and then they will be redirected back to your platform. In this way, you will not need to store information like card number, CVV into your platform. Transaction is happening on Stripe and the status of the transaction is returned back that you can store into your Firebase database. And also you can store transaction ID, which is a public data, and you can store that information, but you cannot store card information into your database. The next thing that you need to understand is that in a Firebase database, there can be multiple collections. And on a particular Firebase collection, database collection, you can perform different actions. You can create a record into a collection. You can read that record, you can display that record on front end, or you can update that record, or you can delete that record. So these are the four operations that you can perform on a collection record. You can either create, read, update, or delete. So these are four operations that you can perform on a collection. So it's important, for example, you create an account on a social media app. So in a social media app, you create an account and that data goes into the users table. So in the users table, there is you can create a record, you can update your profile later on, you can read that and see what information that you have filled, and even you can delete your account on your social media app too. So for access control, FlutterFlow have given a Firebase rules screen where you can apply these rules on your Firebase database. On this screen, there are different access levels that you can utilize, and your collection can be at different access levels. So the first access level is no one. The first access level is no one. It means that for a particular collection, you can limit that no one from front end of the FlutterFlow app can do any changes into that collection. They cannot read it, they cannot update it, they cannot delete it, they cannot create it. So if you put a particular collection at a no one level, then no one can do changes. Even if they are logged in or not logged in, you cannot change that. What table should be at no one level? Anything which is related to configuration. If you believe that this information should not be available front end, it's just for the backend use, then you can put that collection at a no one level. The next access level is users collection. If there is a users table and the information like username, information like age of the person, their ID, or other information like their gender, that information is stored into users table, then the access level for that table can be users collection. This is the new access level. It means that it is my collection and I can update, delete, create this collection. No other person in the system can update this information. So it means that users collection is the level. If you feel like this is the table, this is the collection, no other person should be having a privilege to view this record, update this record, delete this record, then you can set this preference there in that table. Okay. The next thing to the next access level that you can have into your database is the tagged user. So let me explain you. For example, you are creating a social media application. There is a users table where you have stored the information about that particular user who have logged into the platform. But that user can create posts on the platform, just like we do on social media. So if they are able to create posts on a social media app, then they should have an access to update or delete or create that post too. Okay. So for having that access, because this information is not stored into the users table, we cannot store posts information into users table. We need to create a separate collection for that. And because users collection option is not going to be available here, and because it is created by a particular user who is tagged into this record as a tagged user, as this person have created this post. So that's why this access level for this table should be tagged user. Tagged user who have created this post, he should be having access to update or delete this post. Okay, so this is the third access level, which is tagged user. The fourth access level is authenticated user. For understanding authenticated user, we can take the example of social media application. For example, I am the user and I have created a post and it is a public post. So it means that other users on the platform should be able to see my post. How they will be able to see that? If the access level is tagged user, because I am tagged into that, I will be able to see that. But if there is a third person who want to see my post, they cannot see that. So my access level should be authenticated user. Authenticated user is the one who is logged into the application. So someone who have logged into the application, they can see post, and they are not just able to see post of themselves, but they are able to see post of other people who are on the platform too. Just to give them access to see those posts, you need to have the read access level for the post table at the authenticated user level. Sometimes you need to have some tables, some collections where you can store public information. It doesn't matter if there is an authenticated user or not authenticated user, logged in user or not logged in user, they should be able to see that post. For example, blogs. You have to store sometimes blog into your database. Similarly, you have to store FAQs. They are displayed on landing page. This is some information which is a public information. It doesn't matter if someone have logged into the platform or not. So if you will put those tables at authenticated user level, then only logged in user will be able to access that information. Just to make sure that those people who are not logged into the application, they should able to see that too, what you have to do is that for that particular table, you have to make its read access as everyone. So this is the fifth access level that you can have into the platform. By default, you need to make sure that you provide least privilege on a collection to the users, and then make sure that no collection private information should be at the authenticated user level or to the everyone level. Everyone is quite insecure. You need to provide authenticated user only on the public data, which is publicly available for the logged in users. So these access levels, they should be carefully assigned on the platform for security of your platform. The next thing to do for security of your FlutterFlow app is to secure your APIs. In another video, I try to explain what APIs are and what API keys are. API is one thing which is used for connecting with an external platform. So if API is used for connecting the platform, then API keys are digital passwords. If we have those passwords, then we can communicate with third-party application. So if we are building an app and we have to use APIs, and for accessing those APIs we have to use API keys, then we have to secure these API keys too. If we don't secure them, what will happen is that anyone who has access to that API key, they can modify data into that system too. For example, if there is a payment gateway integrated and API key is exposed, it means that users will be able to, an unauthenticated user will be able to access that payment information. Similarly, if there is an email or SMS platform like Twilio or Brevo, they will be able to use your API keys to send messages, which can be quite dangerous for your business. So that's why it's recommended that your API keys should be secure. For securing API keys in FlutterFlow, there is an option to store your API keys into environment variables, and you can mark them as containing sensitive data too. You can mark them secure. So in this way, your application API keys are going to be secure. So for the security of your API keys, the second thing that you can do is that you can restrict API access to a particular platform. For example, you are building a FlutterFlow application and you have to utilize Google Locations API or Google Maps API into your application. So in that case, you can restrict from the dashboard that where you can create these APIs, that it should only be accessible by the platform that you are building. Any app that you are building or a web application that you are building, you can limit access to that only. You can do that just like it is explained in the screenshot. The last thing in my list that you need to care about for securing your application is custom claims. So for example, you have a FlutterFlow app and you have your application, you're using Firebase on backend. So the application is like a hospital-based application. It has patients, it has doctors, and it has an admin who can see all the data about doctors and patients. But patients should only be able to see their information. So for example, there is a patient who should only be able to see their own information. He is a hacker too. He has a little knowledge about technology and he has access to the database structure that you have. So in that case, he can easily access the data of a particular doctor who has access to many patients by changing his role. He may change his role to a doctor or to an admin, and that's why he will be able to have access to all the information present into a database for a particular doctor. So just for securing that, you can use custom claims. Custom claims are that the role of a particular patient, once they log into the application, that is stored, that becomes a part of the token which has the password and email in the auth provider. Basically that token, it contains the role of that particular user too, and that role cannot be changed. That token cannot be changed, and that's why that role cannot be changed. It is not stored into any collection, any column into a particular collection. Once it is not stored, so no one will be able to see what roles are available in the platform and what role this particular user has. They don't have access to it, they cannot change it. So in this way, no one will be able to change their role, and they will be able to see the data that other roles have access to. So these are a few things if you care about, then your application is going to be mostly secure. I will create a separate video where I will explain you how, if you are utilizing Supabase database with FlutterFlow, how you can make it secure. Similarly, how advanced rules are applied on a FlutterFlow app. I will show you that too. Thank you so much for staying with me.